Hello and welcome to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig right here in Starshop Studio in Times Square, where we tell you about the people you want to know about. And today we have the founder and publisher of The Three Tomatoes, Cheryl Benton. She's also the author of Can You See Us Now? We're going to be giving away a free book to the winner, and it's going to be signed, right, Cheryl?
Yes,
yeah,
of course.
And there's another book that's coming out as well. I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
We originally met because one of my friends, Rita, recommended me to you when my book came out. She said, "Oh, you have to reach out to the Three Tomatoes." She was a subscriber to your lifestyle digital magazine. It's for 45 and up, right?
Yeah.
That's the target group. And my book is Your Best Ages Now. So it was like a perfect fit. And that's how we met. You wrote a beautiful review of my book, and we stayed connected. And then you did something for my mother's book, which
I
she was
love
thrilled
that. It was
about.
so fun. Yeah.
But you are a woman that is doing so many interesting things, because really your digital lifestyle magazine came out before. Really, you're kind of a pioneer.
We were. We really were. And it's nice to see other people coming into our space now because, it's the rising tide. What is that expression?
Yes.
And we really need that these days because we need people to really value women over 40 and 50 and 60 and beyond.
I agree. And you were saying that one of the things that really contributed to you developing this site was this feeling of being invisible.
Yes.
Right? And not being noticed, not being recognized by marketers. And you were in the marketing field, right?
I had spent my career in advertising.
Okay.
And when I left the ad agency business, and that was about a dozen years or so ago, and I had started a marketing consulting firm, but I was living and working in New York City, and I had all these great friends who were over 40, over 50, over 60 and beyond. And we would have these conversations, and they started to all get very similar. It was like, well, where do you buy your clothes now so you don't look like your teenage daughter? Or where do you, have a dinner someplace where you can actually have a conversation and the noise level isn't so crazy, and other, kinds of common things. And then there was sort of this theme that was emerging that we were really starting to feel ignored by marketers, by, in the workplace very often as well. And that was really what gave impetus to my starting the Three Tomatoes.
And really, I mean, your online site is so impressive because you deal with so many different topics. And you don't know this, but before one of my birthdays, I went to Things to Do because you recommend things in the city, not only New York City, but LA and San Francisco. And for one of my birthdays, you recommended, or around the time, you didn't recommend it just for me, but it felt like it was just for me. It felt like it was just for me. And I went to this museum where they had old time photos where you could take a picture of yourself as part of the photo. Do you remember recommending that?
Yes.
I brought my daughter. I had the best time. And so you really do make recommendations for restaurants, for fashion, for finance that is just so on point. But there's so many topics that you deal with.
Yeah. And well, our audience, it's a lifestyle guide, and we're interested in all of these things. And just, marketers kind of don't get this, but we still do care about style and fashion and travel and
how could they not
health
get this?
And wellness.
How do they not
because
get
part
this?
Of it, it's such an interesting phenomenon that happens. Part of it is they think that it's not just women. They think that when people get to a certain age, they don't want to try new things. They don't try new brands. We're loyal to the things we started with, which is not the case at all.
No.
And then the other thing sometimes is even with brands that are trying to reach women over 50, the marketing and the advertising is being placed by 20-something media people, and they don't want to put their ads into vehicles that seem old to them. So even though the message may be old, so it's this weird kind of dichotomy that's going on.
It was interesting. I was once talking to this weatherman, and he said, they keep focusing, all the marketers keep focusing on these millennials who don't have any money. They're living with their parents.
Right.
They have to pay back,
I know.
the college.
And we actually, we
and
buy
the 45
things.
and over, really, that's when you're coming into your
We
own.
buy stuff. And
Yeah.
this generation of women, we're the healthiest, wealthiest generation of women ever.
Yeah.
And we're inheriting money from, husbands and parents. And we have money. We have money to spend. And we are still being ignored to a large degree, unless it's pharmaceutical companies who want to, the drug companies.
That's hilarious. That's kind
they
of
still want to
funny.
market to us. That's kind
Are
of
they
about
smarter
it.
than the rest, or they're like, who needs to be hooked up? That is very. Funny.
I want to see a car ad with a woman over 50. And by the way, women over 50 are huge buyers of luxury cars, and we know that from the demographics in our website. I want to see a great ad campaign with a 50-plus woman in her little red convertible zooming down the highway, and we still haven't seen that yet. So,
do you think we're moving in the right direction, though? I mean, when we see many of the actors and some of people's most beautiful women, they're now in their 40s, they're in their 50s. Do you think that things are changing?
I do think it's starting to change. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
But I went to a fascinating event over the summer. It was done by McCann Advertising, and they were reporting. They had done this huge research study called Truth and Age. And what they were trying to do was to show their marketers, their advertisers, that you can't just look at people based on their age demographic. It's really about their attitudes.
Right.
And the results were really fascinating. So they had different categories of people, and someone in their 20s and someone in their 70s could actually be much more alike based on their attitudes than their age. And the piece of it that really fascinated me was that people in their 20s and 30s fear dying the most. People in their 70s fear it the least and don't even think about aging. And hopefully they're going to use this data to reach their marketers to say, listen, you've got to get rid of these old stereotypes that are based on age and look at people based on how they think and what they're doing, and active women and advertisers.
When I was doing research for my book, I was very influenced by the women in New York City.
Right, as was I.
Yeah. They looked amazing, and they were still very sexy and in the best shape of their lives, and in some cases looked better than ever before. They did not want to go back to their 20s and 30s.
No, it's not
they
about
felt
that.
more confident.
Right.
They felt like they had accomplished a lot of their dreams, and also felt younger than they ever imagined they would.
Yes.
And so I think this study that was done is so on point, because it is true. How does a person feel? That influences their essence, their choices.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, mothers and daughters are shopping in the same places. They might wear it differently.
Right, exactly.
Like, I'm not going to wear short shorts the way my daughter does.
Right.
But we can share certain things if you make it appropriate. And so this idea about age kind of aging us out is a disturbing one that we really do need to change.
It is. And what's so important is we need to show positive images of aging. When the more women we show who are over 50, 60, 70, who look beautiful and vital, the less fear there is going to be on the part of people in their 20s and 30s about actually getting older.
I remember telling somebody, I guess I whipped out my license. I don't remember what I was getting, or, they wanted to check my credit card, and she's like, wow. She's like, you look pretty good for your age. And I said, you know what? She was in her 30s. I said, there's a lot to look forward to. And I felt really good about sharing that message, because there is so much fear surrounding age. But look at someone like Ariana Huffington, who talks about the importance of having multiple voices and ages out there. And just in terms of culturally, we all benefit if we have people who are wise sharing that information and having a place for them, kind of like they do in Europe. Like the French laugh at us and say, why are you trying to get rid of every single wrinkle? and,
Right.
just love yourself as
Yes,
you
and
are.
that's such an important message, and you
Yeah.
did that so beautifully in your book,
Oh,
and
thank
I
you.
loved it, and that's what we've been trying to do at the Three Tomatoes,
Mm-hmm.
and every day, it's to be cheerleaders, and we're not telling people how to live their lives or to be,
No.
because they're doing it very well, but we're saying we're in this thing together, and let's figure out how we're going to enjoy every age and every phase of
Mm-hmm.
growing older together.
Because it's about enjoying life. And I just want to let everyone out there know that we are going to have a link to the Three Tomatoes, because everybody should see how comprehensive this site
Mhm.
is. You mentioned to me when we were speaking before the interview how you had the famous Liz Smith, who was a very
Oh.
famous gossip columnist. I didn't know this till I was preparing for the show, but I saw this interview on your site, that what made her famous was reporting, world famous, reporting on Donald Trump's first divorce.
Yes, the whole Marla and
Yes.
Maple scandal
Yeah.
really catapulted her into the
How
stratosphere.
did she find her way to your site?
She was such a great woman, and she died
I think we have a
last
picture of her
summer.
too
Yeah, I think
somewhere. We'll
she
show
was
it.
90 something years old. But I guess I had been doing the Three Tomatoes for about 3 years, and somehow she must have gotten onto my mailing list. I didn't even know she was on my mailing list. And I had put something in our newsletter that a friend of mine had spotted Helen Mirren on a subway in her evening gown, because she was on her way to the Met Gala and it was raining that night and she couldn't get a cab.
Oh, wow.
And there she was taking the subway. So the next day morning, I get up and I open my email, and there's this email from Liz Smith. And she said, "Make sure that you read my column tomorrow." And it's just signed Liz Smith. So I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the real Liz Smith? Is this the fake Liz
Because you
Smith?
never know, right?
Yeah. And at that time, it was when her column was in the New York Post, and she was really highly read. So I couldn't wait for the paper to come out. I scrolled down to the bottom, and it reported this, and as reported by the Three Tomatoes. So I couldn't believe that she did that, number one. So I immediately sent her an email, and I thanked her profusely. And I said, "Listen, I would love to meet you and thank you and do a little interview with you for our website." And at that time, I was living in Murray Hill, and she was only a couple blocks from where I
Oh,
lived.
wow.
So she immediately said yes, and we met at the downstairs of her building had her favorite Mexican restaurant. She loved margaritas. So we met for margaritas. We had the most delightful conversation. She was so interested. I wanted to know everything about her, but she wanted to know all about me. I felt like I was the most important person in her
Oh.
universe at that moment. And for a long time, every once in a while, I would get a little handwritten note from her in the mail with something she had seen. And occasionally I would run into her at an event, and I would always sort of feel a little funny about approaching her. And I'd say, "Oh, it's, Cheryl." And she'd say, "Oh, it's wonderful to see you." And then she'd introduce me to everyone at the table.
Oh,
So
how gracious.
yes. And I thought, here I was, starting up this little startup, and this wonderful woman had reached out to me. And then I asked her if she was doing, by then I think, columns in the Huffington Post and the New York Social
Mm.
Diary, if we could repost, basically syndicate. And she said, I'll
Mm-hmm.
never forget, she said, "Honey, you can post anything of mine you want."
Oh, how
And
lovely.
she was writing up until the week she died. She was still publishing her columns. So it was just great. It's
And
women like that
I'm sure she
that you
just
just
got better
love.
and better. I'm
Yeah.
so motivated when I see women of every age. And I've mentioned this a lot during speaking engagements. It's not the age of a person that walks in first. It's the essence. I
Yes.
mean, I've seen that with Gloria Steinem. I've spoken about that with Joan Rivers. They're the people you really want to be around, because they
Yeah,
are still doing interesting
absolutely.
things. It's based on passion, and it's
Absolutely.
based on their life experience. I mean, who doesn't want to hear more of somebody who's just so wise and interesting?
Right.
You
I
know,
couldn't agree more.
you have Gail Green, who
Gail
all
Green is she's
she's
another
yeah.
idol of mine. I mean, both of these women, many things I love about them, but both of them had actually lost their jobs.
Mm.
Liz Smith lost her column in the Post. Gail Green, of course, wrote for New York Magazine for years. They kind of kicked her out. And they were probably in their 70s and 80s at that point in time. And they figured out, well, we can post on the internet now and we can find other places. And they just kept going and they found new ways to do this. And I so admire them for that. And we all need that spirit, and not to say, oh my gosh, I'm over and done with now, but let me kind of reimagine what I can do with what I've got.
I agree so much with that statement, because part of being in midlife, one of the things that you notice, aside from looking at the future differently and time differently, is that you do have to reinvent yourself because things change.
Yes,
and so the
they're
more
going
flexible that you can be and the more creative you can be, I think the happier one can be. Because if you stay stuck in the old ways, I mean, Larry King, to his credit, when he left CNN, he started on the web. That's a pretty modern thing to do. Why? Because he just loves interviewing people.
And he figured out a new way to do it.
Yes.
And yeah, we can learn a lot from those people. And chances are, if you are a woman over 50 and you're working in corporate America, and I know the ad agency business, your career, unless you're in the C-suite, you're pretty much had it by then.
And people in the ad business know that.
Yeah, and they know that. And the sad thing is that women, I mean, it happens to men too, but women over 50 who lose their jobs have a much harder time getting hired. And I actually heard someone last week, they were talking about this, and they said they've actually seen resumes come in and the HR person had written TO on it, too old.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
It's pretty sad.
It is. So we have to deal with the reality of that, though. It is sad, and that's why you have to always be able to reimagine what it is that
do you know Kate
you
White?
Want to do and be. I don't.
Oh, Kate White she was part of Cosmo for many years and then reinvented herself as an author novelist. And she said, Robbie, I'm a pragmatist. I interviewed her for my book, and she said, you need a plan B.
Yeah.
You have a plan A and then you have a plan B, so that you always have something to shoot for and be realistic about. So you have to kind of know the world you're in, but keep hope alive and keep going. And I was talking to one of my friends who was an artist. She was interviewing jobs. She's like, oh, people think I'm too old. I said, you just go out there and you be yourself and you show what you know. And she ended up getting her favorite job ever.
Wow.
And she's never been happier. Just on multiple levels, because you know what's important to you, and so you know how to interact with people and sell yourself in a way that you probably can't when you're young. Because you're trying to please everyone. When you're older, you're like, I don't really care who I please.
This is me. This is what I'm going to do.
So in addition to being the founder and publisher of this amazing site, which we hope everybody will go to during and after the show, you are also the author of Can You See Us Now? Which is your first novel.
Yes, it is.
And it's doing really well. And in fact, you are having an event at Bloomingdale's. We'll have information with What Women Want. It's next Tuesday?
It's the 13th.
I think it's November 13th.
November 13th.
And there'll be information about how to get tickets for that as well.
It's going to be fun.
What inspired you to write this book? Was it based on you, your friends?
Because it's about 3 women. It's 3 women who have been best friends, have all worked in an ad agency together, and had been best friends since their 20s. And they've, left to do, one stayed in advertising, one went into broadcast journalism, one owned an art gallery, married a very wealthy hedge fund guy. They were, the world was their oyster. New York City was their playground. And then they turned 50 and things started to change. They became invisible, the one in the ad agencies working for the 12-year-old boss, and life has changed. But they are inspired in the book by a wonderful group of women who range in age from 50s up into their 90s, who they call the ripe tomatoes, who inspire them throughout the book, and they start a business together. But it's based on stories that I've heard from so many women, and all the incredible women that, like you were talking about, that in New York City, because we live here. And there are some amazing women, and it's usually the older women who walk into a room, and that's who people turn their heads when they walk in, because they're women with this great style and substance, and you just take notice of them.
I read something that Coco Chanel wrote. She said, like, in your 20s, you could be naturally beautiful. In your 30s, you need to work on it. I'm misquoting her, but she said, once you're like 50 and beyond, you could be fabulous forever. And I was like, I love her attitude because
Exactly.
look at so many, like even Christy Brinkley, and I realize not everybody's going to be a supermodel, but we are seeing more and more people who are just, they look great and glamorous at every age, and I think we really need to underscore that.
And it's not just celebrities.
No.
I mean, there are real women we all know in New York
Yes.
who look incredible, fabulous, and are living amazing lives.
That's right.
And they inspire all of us.
And their happiest lives.
Yes.
I mean, we kind of get stuck, and this is an idealization of youth, that when you're young, that's when your best times. Hopefully you'll have a lot of great times when you're young, but really great times can happen at any point. You can fall in love at any point. You can find the job of a lifetime at any point.
And I think once you turn 52, as you said before, a lot of things that you used to care about just don't matter anymore. Mm-hmm. And you become more creative.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great time when women really do discover their passions and the things that they really care about, and go out and do much better things in the second and third acts of their lives than they ever thought about doing when they were younger. And that's what we see all the time.
I agree. And I just want to mention that, and we'll get to your next book that's coming out, because it's going to be a great little gift. You have a lot of fun articles that jump off the page, like how can women get out of their style comfort zone? So you talk about new color, new shape or style, and try one new thing. So there are a lot of articles out there.
Yes.
They're just playing. It's like a marching band's outside. We're going to pretend that's for us. One of the things that we like to do here, and I'll just talk loud. Before we get to the 5 questions, tell me about Martini Wisdom.
Oh, Martini Wisdom. I so love this because I co-authored it with my daughter, Ronnie Jenkins, who's been involved with the 3 Tomatoes since she was a cherry tomato. Now she's officially a tomato. And once a week for many years in the 3 Tomatoes, we have what we call them the Martini Ladies, and they have some kind of totally irreverent quote, sort of think Betty Davis going, darling, So we thought, we have so many of them. So we put together 50 of our favorites into this little book. And it's a great, fun, I think, gift item for all your friends. It should be out in the next week.
Oh my goodness, this is perfect timing.
I know.
So, Martini Wisdom, look for it. We will, again, redirect you to the 3 Tomatoes website, because I imagine you'll have a link there that people can see.
For sure.
Before we close, we like to do the 5 questions. Good. So people, your fans, can get a sense of who you are. First question is, what social stigma does society need to get over?
Ageism.
Yes, I agree.
Ageism is the last of the acceptable isms, and if you think about it.
And we'd all benefit because we're all aging.
Yeah.
Like, unless, if things go well, you're going to age.
Yes.
Right? And we all want to age. We hope we have that opportunity. What makes you roll your eyes every time you hear it?
These drums right now.
These drums. So you never know in Times Square what's going to happen.
I know, that's what's so great about being in the heart of New York City.
Right?
I know.
If magic was real, what spell would you try to learn first?
Oh my gosh. Wow, that is such a great question. I would probably want to learn how to make us all look fabulous every single day, and no matter what age we are. You just sort of take your little magic.
See, you're such a nice
wand.
person. My first thought was, I'd make the people I don't like disappear. But
well, maybe that would be my second wish.
Right. You can borrow that too anytime. Okay. What about the opposite sex confuses you the most?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, where do we start? Really?
Yeah, I know.
Like the fact, and we have one of these little quotes in the book because it came from him. Like when I say to my husband, I'm like, I'm so hot. And he'll say, it's not hot in here.
Yes.
It's just you.
Yes.
That's when I say, you want to take his penis and put it in that mammogram machine and say,
wrong with their hormones?
It's like, hello.
Yes, I agree with
but
that.
I'm hot.
So insulting.
Like, yes. I'm like, well, you
No.
can put a sweater on, but I'm opening the windows.
That's right. Windows open even in the winter. Thank you very much. Okay. What goal do you think humanity is not focused enough on achieving?
I think we need a whole lot of kindness in this
Kindness.
world. I would
I
put right
agree.
now kindness number one. I think we've
Kindness
lost
and decency
that.
would do us all very
Yeah,
well.
wouldn't
Well,
it?
that's what your site is all about, with interesting ideas and information and people contributing. You are amazing and wonderful. I'm so glad
So are
we had this
you. Me
opportunity.
too. Thank
We're
you
going to
so
send
much.
everybody to the link where you can find out about this book. And also, if you like and share the show, you will be eligible to win a signed free copy. So please do that.
And as soon as this one's out, we'll give someone this one
Well,
too,
great,
Martini
Martini
Wisdom.
Wisdom, and I want one for myself.
Yes.
I'm going to buy it as a gift for my friends.
Awesome.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.